Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Money Movement. I'm joined today by Anatoly Yakovenko, co-founder of Solana Labs, and someone who I have just immense respect for, and really happy to have you here, and lots we can talk about.
Awesome to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a big year for Solana. It's been a big year all around for a lot of people. I think it'd be maybe just helpful to start just, state of Solana. What are the kind of critical metrics that you're looking at when you think about KPIs, what's important, and where you guys are at today?
Yeah, some of the most important things are like real users, humans using the network. And we see that like with fandom and on-chain activity, it's to about 2 million monthly active users. And we're seeing the daily active user count sometimes break what Polygon and Ethereum are seeing, like 300,000 or so daily active users, signers, as we call them.
Active signers.
Yeah,
right?
Active signers. And that to me is a really kind of important metric because it signals that there's more real human activity, more people doing something on this chain that's valuable to them. That's really exciting. Some of the things we saw like over the last year, and this didn't even take the whole year, like things like Metaplex, which launched May last year. There's over 1 million users with NFTs in their wallets now. I think close to 8 million NFTs minted. I think it's minting at like, I don't know, I forget, but like a multiple of what the number of mints on Ethereum in terms of like actual NFTs launching. So that has been the most surprising use case to me of all the things.
I think. JPEGs are hot. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, obviously, like scalability. This is where the strengths of Solana are really showing, right? High performance user experience, unit economics that work, and so app developers and creators are attracted to that, obviously.
And part of one of the most important kind of, I would say, lagging KPIs is the number of stablecoins issued, like USDC. And that's been really important to see because that to me also tells me that these users have demand for hard currency, which is somebody has to put those dollars in a bank, right? And that's a very hard thing to do at scale. And that's, I think, like over 4 billion already. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we've been collaborating now for I don't know, a year and a half or whatever it has been. But I think we continue to see more and more projects that are being built that are building on USDC on Solana, and people are really starting to think about this as lighting up mainstream applications, mainstream payments. And I know we can talk about Solana Pay, and we can talk about that use case specifically. But it seems like when people talk about, how are we going to actually fulfill this promise of like digital cash and digital cash payments that are usable on the internet, it feels like today, USDC on Solana is a really great example of that, and sort of how do you solve the user experience problem above and beyond just the transaction settlement?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of that has to do with what users want. And I think fundamentally, a lot of users want the safest, for payments specifically, they want the safest possible dollar, right? Like they want, and there's a lot that goes into that word safe. And like, how do you because there's platform risk, smart contract risk, wallet custody risk, but also, on your side, the risk of those assets and things like that.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to do our part to establish, trust and credibility and give the market really robust infrastructure for getting access to that. For sure. I'm interested. you see a lot of different things that are hacpening in the developer community, right? I think so much of your success has been just like being active in developer communities, supporting them, running hackathons, bringing people together. And actually, maybe it's a good KPI for you to talk about, which is like, when you start, I remember your earliest hackathons and kind of where that was.
There were 100 teams that finished something.
I know. But like, where you guys have, what is it that's just launching now? It's called
Riptide.
Riptide.
Right? We saw like what I can only call like true exponential growth in developer activity from that first hackathon where there were 100 teams, about 14 of them had something useful, like they built something.
Yeah, I remember.
And then
I was the judge.
Yeah. It just started kind of doubling basically every hackathon. The one right before this one had more teams finish a project than all the other hackathons combined. And that to me was really, really cool. That was close to the 370 teams. Riptide, are like, can we break 1,000? Can we get 1,000 teams to build something and like compete for the prizes and get funding and things like that? And a lot of that means that we have to now look outside of initially it was almost a little easier because you can kind of see what Ethereum was doing. And then, okay, we need DeFi, we need NFTs or other stuff, and just build reference implementations there. But now we've matured to a point where I think Solana is leading on some of the innovation. So Solana Pay is one of those things. We haven't seen a breakout payments application in crypto.
Yeah.
And why isn't there like a true Venmo competitor in crypto?
Yeah.
There should be at least one, right? That's trying.
I mean, that was the first product we ever built was Circle Pay, and that was like we were doing like dollars over Bitcoin, and that had some scalability problems. but now, I mean, now it's wide open, and we certainly see a lot of startups that are trying to use our APIs to then in turn build wallet products. But do you feel like at Riptide, do you feel like you're going to see a lot of payments related projects that are being kind of built?
Yeah, we saw right when Solana Pay was announced. So Solana Pay is a very, very simple thing. It's literally just BIP21. Like if you know what BIP21 is for Bitcoin, back in the day. Yeah. It's for the folks that don't know what that is, it's a very simple URL specification of how to request a payment from a wallet. So it's a way for a merchant to generate a QR code, which is a URL link. That thing tells the wallet, hey, I want to pay this particular merchant for this item with this amount of dollars.
Right. And
it autofills that in the UI, and that integration makes it easy for merchants to request you for stuff, right? And it's not rocket science, right? Anybody could have built this, but we found that like when there's sometimes an opportunity for us to build a standard, like Metaplex was incubated at Solana, and it, again, very simple thing. This is the standard NFT, and that spurs a ton of development and innovation and grows way beyond what we initially saw. And that already kind of happened surprisingly. Like as soon as it was announced, we saw people hack up Square point of sale units to accept Solana Pay and stuff like that. I think hundreds of merchants reached out like almost immediately. There's a lot of demand for alternative payment rails because of how, like, I think the way that payment systems are set up right now is that they're very much set up with putting merchants at a disadvantage in the entire kind of in the entire process of getting paid.
And well, it's like there's a lot we could talk about on that topic, but like it's kind of like in the earlier generations of the internet, like if you were a content creator, you couldn't have a direct relationship to people. You had to get published in a magazine, or you have to get published. You got to go through a book publisher who had distribution at Barnes and Noble or record labels or TV networks or cable distribution, whatever. All this distribution was the thing. And so, the internet basically said, actually, no, you can have a direct relationship. And that was even the case with businesses too, right? If you created a product, you had to find distribution through retail, but then you could actually just build a website and have direct distribution, or you could use a marketplace and have like global distribution. And these kinds of things emerged in all these areas. And in some ways, payments is the same thing, right? Like it seems like a business can directly take a payment, but they're not. They're like, if I walk into a store and give a $20 bill, that is in fact a direct payment. Like there's no intermediary. It's just there and it's final settlement. I know I have it, right? But if you want to take a payment, you've got like 7 intermediaries between you and the actual money. And you've got all these other layers of incentive systems and complexity. And so in some ways, even though to someone who might take their Phantom wallet and scan a QR code and confirm a transaction to the person paying, okay, that feels like my Apple Pay or whatever. And so to them, it's like, okay, I'm doing this. But to the merchant, it's as good as cash. Yeah. And that's powerful, right? That's really, really powerful.
And that's kind of exactly the feedback that we've been hearing is like people really, really want that power, like on the merchant side. And that was to me surprising. You know, I didn't kind of put the two together because I'm not deep in the payments world, but it makes so much sense. Like this is really where the intermediaries who they really hurt right now in the entire financial system is the seller, right? The people that are trying to sell you this product. Yeah. And the users are not aware of this, right? It's kind of hidden from them. And that results in higher prices and for everybody. And kind of, it's just a...
Right. Yeah, but there's going to be so much motivation for businesses to do this. I guess kind of maybe tying it back to one of the other questions about what's going on at Riptide and your hackathon and what are you seeing out there and payments is what do you think are the if you're sitting here talking to developers and others who are listening, what do you think the problems are to solve if you're building a Solana compatible wallet or payment experience, or like what are the problems that developers should be focusing on solving? I have a few ideas, but I'm very interested in yours.
I think the UX, making it kind of simple enough for casual users to use, which means that you have to be careful about security and telling users that they probably shouldn't store tens of thousands of dollars in this wallet, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're, the simpler you make the security assumptions, the more you kind of have to start communicating to users about the limits of what you should trust this particular security model to, and that's a very tough challenge. I think UX wise, there needs to be a reason for a consumer to use this over Venmo. And that's a very hard kind of like, Venmo has a moat, right? Everyone kind of has it. And it's very hard to break into. So you got to find your niche, right? And there are niches where there are users that are not served by Venmo at all. Surprisingly, Cash, like the Score Cash app is pretty popular in a ton of places where Venmo isn't. Finding those niches and like,
I think the monthly active users on Cash App is higher than Venmo, actually.
Yeah, but I didn't know that, but that's surprising to me. I think the advantage
maybe that's a like West Coast thing or something.
Yeah, maybe. The advantages I think are like, where can you start using this application where you can do stuff that Venmo can't? And that could be yield products. That could be like, here's a rewards point builder for your simple, like go click next. And now you have rewards points like for everybody, right? It
seems like that. Yeah, I totally agree. And it seems like, this is also one of the objections that I've heard in the past around, okay, if you solve the problem of you making it like a fast, a fast, cheap payment, the users don't care because the users want rewards or the users want this. Now, if a business is able to receive this and they're saving 3% or they're saving 2% or wherever it is, they actually might be able to afford to provide incentives. And then what are those incentives? Are those incentives like USDC cashback? Are those incentives actually, no, there's a form of reward token that is an NFT, and that then you're getting this credential and you can accrue more value from that, and then have different forms of affinity. So it seems like the intersection of like stablecoin, payments, NFTs, like working together could actually create incentive models for and actually build customer relationships that are better than the abstract, like I get my Chase points or whatever. Like you could actually build something that's more durable as a business by leveraging NFTs and crypto payments. And
this is where I think, like, I have like a lot of crazy ideas. Every time you buy a sneaker, you can have like the crypto kickers mint that sneaker for you.
Yeah.
And you can get that NFT, and that would be really, really cool.
Right.
But you have to find that kind of right user and that right product where the stuff works, and not.
Yeah, I mean, like NFTs, like, a ticket is an NFT and a coupon is an NFT. Like all these things are essentially NFTs, right? And so I think it's people starting to say, hey, actually, I'm going to build a coupon protocol, and anyone can implement the coupon protocol. And the coupon protocol it supports USDC, and it supports it generates a particular type of coupon NFT. And imagine that maybe someone could do that at your hackathon, and then you mash these things up, and now you start to do something pretty interesting. So there's a lot of things like that I think that are possible for sure. I guess another one is the whole people like credit. Right. So one of the other reasons why people use credit cards is that they like credit. They like to borrow. And I think there's a whole question of, are there, it's the buy now, pay later phenomenon. And are there ways to build, like on-chain BNPL, leveraging, things like verifiable identity credentials, verifiable credit scores that can be proven to a smart contract that then, actually, would enable a DeFi protocol to underwrite someone for credit at a just-in-time payment. And that could, again, be a protocol that could then be woven together by people building applications like this.
That is I think one of the most exciting opportunities, but that's a serious undertaking, right? That's a venture backable startup.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's plenty of people that will back you, but but it's not going to be easy. And that's one of the most, I think, exciting ones that I feel could revolutionize finance. I'm just wondering, where do you guys see Circle? Is that something like these features that you guys would ever want to build, or are you looking for companies to kind of build on top of Circle?
I think it's sort of all of the above. Like, I think our general view is, first, we just want to like promote really wide adoption of things like USDC and other standards that we think are important, standards in identity, things like Solana Pay or payment protocol standards. Like, it's just important that, there's developers can just use these things and build all kinds of things, right? And we want to support that and invest in that. At the same time, we definitely want to try and solve some problems for businesses, and be able to provide services through a Circle account and Circle APIs that that deal with some of these problem spaces. So I think we're both interested in just seeing proliferation of creativity around these problem spaces, because at the end of the day, that is really valuable for making this work. And then secondly, we certainly want to continue to add value ourselves. We do today provide payment APIs and payout APIs. Our payment APIs can handle payments with crypto, but also payments with legacy rails. And I think we'd like to see kind of payments with crypto rails really improve. But I guess our view is that it's not something to do alone, right? Because this is only interesting is if there's a lot of interoperability and people can, anyone who creates a digital wallet or a smart contract or a point of sale device or whatever, that stuff should be non-proprietary, right? So I think we're interested in, creating standards and also implementing them ourselves.
What are the challenges with like a credit system, like to go to build this? This is something that I've been noodling in my head, but it seems like there's a lot of pieces that you need that are still not there yet in blockchain.
Yeah, I guess I think that if you wanted to do all of these things on top of crypto primitives and smart contracts, and have user controlled wallets that could do this, there are a lot of things that are needed, right? You need I think you need provable identity. So you need to have like identity attestations that, you could get an identity from a Coinbase or a FTX or Square or whoever. And you could then, kind of go out to a service and then just know, okay, I'm dealing with a real human. Okay. And then I think you also need the ability to have ways to have kind of claims about an identity that are cryptographically proven, that can be presented as credentials and verified by a smart contract without privacy leakage. But like, I want to prove a credit score on chain. It's a little bit like the Oracle problem, but I think it's more specific to identity. And so I think that's like a really important building block. And I think when you have that building block, then people can start to build, applications or smart contracts that can start to make decisions based on real world data and identity, which you kind of need to do when you're underwriting someone for credit, right? And then, I think, I think in theory, just like you have liquidity providers on DeFi protocols and you have risk takers on insurance pools on DeFi protocols, like you could imagine there being, essentially liquidity providers and risk takers that are providing, unsecured underwriting, but having a little bit more data to be able to do that. So that's like a next piece. But I think if you look at what's been implemented in DeFi to date, you can see some patterns that could be applied there. I think one of the things is actually, the kind of the recurring payment problem, which is, the equivalent of like, there's a smart contract that has access to balances that I can sweep from in an automated way. Just like, I whatever, if I use a firm and I've linked my bank account and they, take a certain amount of debit from my bank, to pay down my balances, sort of permissioning of sweeps on smart contracts and in a digital wallet on a recurring basis. So I think that's kind of what you need to solve those kinds of problems. I think, but those seem like solvable problems.
Do you think consumer protection on like returns and stuff like that is critical for this? Or like, this is like, I'm trying to like understand what is a credit card at the end of the day.
Right.
Or are those like, it almost feels like in a decentralized world, we could have a different protocol for each one of these pieces that are kind of come together. Yeah.
I mean, you could imagine, you could imagine, at the end of the day, right, returns and chargebacks or returns and either seller fraud, are risks. And so if there's a market for that risk and you can price that risk and there's there's people who are willing to provide the liquidity that's needed for that risk, you could in theory do that on chain as well. You could simply say there's risk of seller fraud. That is essentially where some of the fees come from when you use PayPal. Or use, why is it more expensive to use PayPal? Why is it more expensive to use American Express as a business? It's because there's insurance products that are built into that. and it's the price of the insurance. And so again, why not have those insurance products kind of work in a protocol on chain that then markets can interact with, and not have it be tied to a particular closed loop payment system, but be more open. So I do feel like these are, pricing of risk and underwriting and providing liquidity against that risk. That is the problem. And so it seems like there's ways to do that without, again, requiring like a whole closed loop kind of model.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what developers try this hackathon. I think this is I'm really encouraged.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's an exciting time when people can start to work on these kinds of problems. Maybe changing gears a little bit, and maybe to conclude that, like, super excited about the work that's happening in with Solana in this space with USDC and stuff, and excited about what we can keep doing together. But I guess like changing gears a little bit, which is essentially we'll call it like the scalability wars. Where are we in that journey? And I think there's sort of resiliency and robustness, which is obviously like critical. And then in terms of just the architecture for scaling itself, how are you feeling about, what the kind of improvements that are happening with bandwidth and high performance computing are going to mean for Solana and or other things that you're doing architecturally, like a little bit on the scalability roadmap to the degree that you want to talk publicly about that.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is open source and in GitHub. So if you're watching, you kind of see what's happening. So some of the exciting things that are like basically in 1.9, but we're effectively testing them at scale. We reworked the accounting system, how the memory is stored, so it's not dependent on RAM. So effectively, we've been able to simulate like a cluster with like over, I think close to 8 billion accounts running in about 4 terabytes. So roughly, 1 billion account is about 500 gigabytes of state and stable. And you can effectively throw SSDs at this and keep growing the state unlimited, right? It's limited by the PCI buses and how many things you can stuff in a single node. But you can actually see that in theory, there's no reason why we're limited to a single piece of hardware per validator. You can actually start parallelizing this across multiple machines, but we don't need that yet. I think in a lot of ways, Moore's law is still growing a lot faster than crypto is. Like
right. Okay. So adoption, hardware and hardware throughput is outpacing adoption of
for now.
Networks. Yeah.
For now.
But that's we know that what happens there, right?
So I suspect we'll see some point where there's a very rapid inflection curve for crypto adoption, where we go from the maybe 5 million users that actively sign stuff in crypto per month globally, right, to 500 million. And
right.
When that happens, I think, this is where it's critical for us that not only are we ready from the software perspective, like why are we testing all this stuff? Why are we even working on this when nobody needs it? It's because we want to have this live with the hardware to when that flood of users comes, that it happens on Solana. So things like that, and like reliability, folks have been probably watching our development using Quick. This is a protocol that's kind of like fancy TCP. If you want to dumb it down, it's developed by Google about, I think, almost 10 years ago at this point. It's the difference between TCP and Quick is that Quick is built on top of UDP, so it allows out of order delivery of messages. You don't get that that kind of slow, slow performance that you see when you're making a connection and it gets blocked because there's a bunch of stuff. So that low latency, fast response time is something that Quick enables and has the same security benefits of TCP. So that's a big part of our effort to improve reliability. But after that, we're still, I think, looking at dynamic fees. So part of the challenge with Solana is we didn't know how the fee markets would work on a system like this, because it's a parallel system, right? So in Ethereum, you have a single state, single virtual machine. A transaction can run across any part of it at any time. So it's a single threaded application,
right?
Everything runs in a very simple sequence. Solana is not that. It's very parallelizable and multi-threaded. So the thing that we really wanted to avoid with the fee market was that fees should only rise for a hotspot activity, like this specific NFT drop, or the BTC USDT market that is moving really quickly shouldn't impact fees for a payment because they're not touching the same state. This is something that we've been able to observe on chain, and I think we have a really good design now that we can move forward with.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
Because it would be pointless for fees to rise globally, because of one activity on one part of the state, even though it's not really touching anything. So effectively, what we're seeing on chain is that limits for how much a single piece of data can be written to, those are being hit quite infrequently still, but sometimes. But the rest of the block is not full. So all those other transactions shouldn't see a fee increase. Only that specific lending market for whatever that trade pair is, or that Radium IDO that's just launching.
That's really interesting. I mean, that would help so much with a lot of things. But yeah,
what I like about this is that it really, I think, is, these are basically like the last 0.5% of, I think, development of how this blockchain should work is happening right now. And there's no way we could have foreseen what the solutions were 2 years ago when we didn't see all this activity, right? When we didn't see what kind of applications users are building, how they're using the chain. So we actually, I think, get to solve the right problems right now.
Interesting. What are you seeing in terms of tooling? More and more tooling. I know, that obviously when you got started, you had to be pretty close to the metal, and you still kind of do. But where are you seeing the kind of tooling growth? Because that's obviously a major thing that people talk about with any of these, because these are novel platforms, and at the end of the day, you need the rituals and the tooling and the libraries and all that.
Yeah, we got, I think, made the best choice of using Rust as the primary language, because it's a very rich, expressive language. It's a modern language with a modern type system. And what I was waiting for is effectively Armani, who's this amazing developer, not part of Solana, but working on the Serum ecosystem, to take Rust and then build the best application environment for devs. And that happened over the last, let's say, 6 months. We went from having people to kind of by hand write out which accounts go where and things like that, to a very rich type system that is extremely secure, gives you effectively type level security, which is as good as a formally verified in your smart contract definitions, and makes it very easy to plug that into JavaScript or client code and rapidly build applications. That still is not going to find all the bugs, or there's still business logic bugs. You still have to worry about arithmetic bugs, and some of those things can be detected by this really amazing team that is building effectively an automatic scanner for vulnerabilities using LLVM super compilation. So it kind of looks at your program as a giant algebraic function, and then tries to simulate it in every possible way and see if it violates some assumptions about security. And that's the combination of both of those, I think, will really allow people to write, rapidly develop very secure smart contracts if both of those tools are used.
That's cool. I'm glad to hear it. With the whatever news stories in the media are, there's the talent migration from Web 2 to Web 3. I know both Solana and Circle were both hiring a lot of really interesting people out of great Web 2 companies. So I can attest that is true. That is happening.
That is the biggest shift from last year. is that how many hires we're seeing coming out of Google, Facebook, like these big companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that at every level, from like individual engineers to senior leaders to everything, right? So I think that's a really huge leading indicator of, how big this is going to be, right? Because I think, we're all aspiring to build the next great internet, kind of projects. But on that note, I think one of the things that people are paying attention to are, when some, mainstream company, I hate to use that phrase, but like some mainstream company decides we're going to do something and we're going to do it on, X platform or this platform. And, we're seeing that like, Coachella or whatever with Solana and FTX obviously as well. But like, and you probably know about a lot of stuff that you can't talk about or whatever, but like, are there categories like that where you're kind of getting surprised or whatever, where, there's just developers or companies that are like, we did the research and, here's how we're thinking about this.
Yeah. Two surprises. One is how fast the NFT kind of, how quickly folks understood NFTs at these big companies. And I think they're much more comfortable with moving fast there. It seems less risky to them. And the other surprise was how hard it is for financial institutions to set up something as simple as USDC deposit and withdrawal. Yeah. Like, and that to me is like the other side of it, is that like something that I feel like is obvious that should be rapidly growing in fintech is hard because of regulatory uncertainty.
We've got good APIs for that.
Like, it's very simple to do, and I think would be like a very simple step forward, right? For a big bank to do that. The NFT thing is both surprising because I think there's a lot of folks sincerely in Web2 that are focused on enabling small long tail creators to make money. That's effectively what I think a lot of KPIs for a lot of them are. Like when I'm looking at my ecosystem, right? How many of these creators are actually able to financially support themselves from the activity in these platforms? So when they see an NFT as an opportunity for an individual creator to publish some digital items, which generate revenue for them, monetize their work, that seems like a very aligned to what a lot of Web2 companies want to do. And that's very aligned to with us and everything that we want to do, right? We want to get artists that are musicians that are, making nothing from Spotify, but are able to generate like, 2-3 years worth of their income from a single NFT drop, because that's a direct sale from that artist to their fans, right? That's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, it is. I want to come back to an ecosystem topic, which is sort of validator node growth. What are you kind of seeing happen with the network itself?
When we started, we had 40 validators. I think there's 1,500 block producers and like 1,300 like other nodes in the networks. I think we're at like 2,800. I think basically, I think ETH is at 5,000. So we're over 50%.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the other, like, so both are important, the actual security of the network depends on at least one of them being honest and providing data availability when something catastrophic happens.
Yeah.
So as long as we can find one, and the more you have, the more likely it is that you'll find one. And that probability becomes so high that at some point you kind of at a gut level feel like, okay, this data is always going to be here. I can trust the system even if Yellowstone blows up, right? And this is when that mental shift happens for crypto people. I feel like it's somewhere at around 1,000 nodes, maybe a few hundred to 1,000. But I don't know when that mental shift will happen for like the CTO of, I don't know, Bank of America.
Right. Well, I mean, I got to tell you, like for us, right, with USDC, as you know, we're preparing to become like a national digital currency bank, and we, we're going to be working with, our regulatory counterparts, and the U.S. Treasury Department, or whatever, when they think about like a dollar market infrastructure, and they're asking about reliability, and they're asking about security, and they're asking about uptime, and they're asking about what happens if all these things. What happens if Russia decides to attack the network to disrupt the dollar or whatever? These are like real conversations. I'm just giving you a little inside baseball here, but like these are real things that have to be thought about. Maybe we can do this on air, so to speak, but help me make the case for why 3 years from now or 5 years from now, when maybe there's $1 trillion USDC in circulation, and there's and there's like this widespread adoption, why this is going to be the most secure infrastructure in the world.
So I think because the fundamental premise of what a layer one does is a peer-to-peer network. And this is what, the simple example is actually using something like USDC. So if I have my keys and I have custody of my keys and I can keep that secure, and Circle has a single node that they can keep secure, both of those are solvable problems. You guys hired amazing engineers that can keep that node secure. I can use, cold storage, ledgers, right? There's a bunch of hardware devices I can use that could keep my keys secure. Yeah. The rest of the network can be totally corrupted.
Right. So that's sort of the ultimate fault tolerance, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So that in that case, the money's in your bank. Right. The rest of the network can be fully corrupted. There's
still someone else's database with those dollars. But then this kind of the transaction integrity and then the actual proof of tokens, right? You have at a minimum that. I buy that.
But that's good enough for something. These guarantees that nobody can convince you that I spent my dollars.
Right.
And that level of security is very important to establish, because then you can start talking about everything else. Well, what happens if there's a chain split? How do we deal with that? Right. Like if there's now, Russia was able to compromise a bunch of nodes and they created a chain split, and now there's one ledger that Circle accepted with USDC transfers and another one. But those processes and reconciliation, right, and the amount of security and insurance that you need to cover those, right, based on what amounts are at risk, those are finite computable numbers. We can solve that, right? We can start solving for those, and then seeing what is the cost of using the technology, what are the risks of that happening, right, and how do you mitigate against those? And fundamentally, what we're doing at the technology level is, if we make the system cheaper and faster, right, and the next generation PCI 5, all those things become online, then the number of nodes, the number of block producers, everything else can double or quadruple, and then those attacks become much, much harder to pull off. And effectively, that means the system is cheaper to use, it's more trustworthy. Where that mental shift happens for the Bank of America CTO, I don't know. That's like
how about the Bank of Circle CTOs?
Right. So that's those are questions that I feel like we should be asking now and getting into serious conversations with those folks. And doing the analysis and seeing where the weaknesses are right now and how we can improve them.
No, those are not only the right conversation to be having, but they are happening. I think as more and more people start to accept that this is going to get internet scale. It's pretty exciting. Awesome. When you think about what you're most excited about in the next year, like looking back, you got a year. When you think about the next year, where do if we're talking again in 12 months, and I'm going to make sure I schedule another one of these in 12 months, but what are you most excited about?
So the thing that we're actively trying to enable is all these new entrepreneurs to launch their projects, launch their products. that is the most important thing that we're working on. We're obviously talking to bigger companies and helping them make their technology choices and things like that. But what I want to see is, if we have 1,000 if we actually hit 1,000 teams building something in this hackathon, 10,000, right? Like, can we make this even bigger? Because if that's happening, right? If you actually get to a point where there's thousands of devs building something, then the 100 million users are just around the corner, right? You cannot stop that wave.
Absolutely.
We can build products right internally, and we do sometimes, but that's just maybe 2-3 products a year, right? Multiply that by 1,000. That's when you get into something interesting, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's right. I think I like to, one of the things I like to sort of say is, a lot of times people, when they think about, whatever USDC specifically, right? It's like, oh, okay, this is going to make, faster, cheaper, more secure payments or whatever. Like, I mean, yes, but that's not the point. The point is like programmable dollars on the internet. The point is that this is like composable into any kind of application. And I'm like, we don't actually know what people are going to invent. Like, we just don't know like the creativity that people are going to have. And when you think about all the other things that people are creating that then this can kind of interact with, that's what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about what I don't know, like what I haven't seen, and so I think a big part of our jobs, right, is just getting people to see that they have these tools and they have these capabilities. And I think about USDC as like, it's the dollar with internet superpowers. And so what can you build with that, and what can you build with that in software? But anyway, very cool stuff, Toly. Great to catch up. And I'm glad we could put together this conversation.
Absolutely. Anytime.